Our primary election is right around the corner, coming up on March 17th, and Chicago needs election judges. You can help your neighbors cast their votes by going to pollworker.chicagoelections.gov. You do have to be a U.S. citizen and a registered voter in Cook County, but you can earn $230 for your service. Plus, if you're bilingual in Spanish, Hindi, Polish, Korean, Chinese, or Tagalog, then they definitely need your help. To learn more and apply, head to pollworker.chicagoelections.gov or call 312-269-7984. If you're looking for a place to slide for spring break, maybe check out South by Southwest 2026 when it drops in Austin, Texas this March 12th through the 18th. You can expect the unexpected where innovation, film and TV, music, and culture collide. Plus, you'll hear from global thought leaders, experience unforgettable screenings, and maybe catch a future favorite artist all in one week. The 2026 South by Southwest conferences and festivals are a city-wide experience, and you lucky because our friends over at CityCast Austin have everything you need to maximize your time in the city. Start planning your adventure and unlock a 10% discount on your innovation badge when you use code CityCast10 at sxsw.com/Chicago. Discount on badge price only, not combinable, and terms apply. Today on CityCast Chicago, you've probably heard of Battle of the Bastards, but what about Battle of the Bike Lanes? Plus, a historic holiday week in Chicago, and y'all had plenty of thoughts on the Bears. It's Thursday, February 19th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. We've got executive producer Simone Alicea in the building. How you feeling today, my friend?
I'm all right, Jacoby. How are you?
I'm doing good. You already got your spring cleaning going, cleaning out that mailbox of yours.
Hey, I feel like people are going to come for me for not checking my mail that frequently. And you know what? You don't know my life, so.
We've also got producer Michelle Navarro in the building. How you feeling today, Michelle?
Hey, Jacoby. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing good. Let's jump into it, y'all. There is ongoing tension in Brighton Park and McKinley Park surrounding roadway developments in the neighborhoods as a part of Chicago's Complete Streets programs. I look at this and just thought, okay, more bike lanes coming to the neighborhoods. That's what almost every Chicagoan we talk to wants for their neighborhood, right? Easier to walk around, easier to get on your bike. But that is not the case in this neighborhood. It doesn't seem like it's that simple or it's playing out that calmly, Simone.
Yeah. So what is happening is the city is doing some construction on Archer Avenue to do road improvements. This is part of its Complete Streets program, which we've talked about on the show before, just sort of a general effort to make our streets safer via infrastructure, addition of not only bike lanes, but also, concrete bump outs, right, to do some kind of traffic calming. It's sort of generally the Complete Streets program and the many of the improvements that are happening on Archer Avenue are there to make streets safer for pedestrians, cyclists, but also for drivers, right? And Archer Avenue in particular is an especially deadly thoroughfare in Chicago. From between 2019 to 2023, according to reporting in Block Club Chicago, over 1,400 people were injured and 14 people killed. And half of those people killed were pedestrians. Michelle, you can tell us, like, it's not a ton of pedestrians out on Archer Avenue necessarily because of the way that road has been constructed. Is a really big thoroughfare. But Jacoby, I think it's interesting that, like, as we've said, a lot of the folks we've talked to a lot of cycling advocates in particular who obviously will welcome the bike lanes. But this is every time this comes up in neighborhoods, this ends up being a really big debate. And bike lane debates are among the most interesting to me because you end up having particularly businesses, longtime businesses on a given block. Often when you are building these bike lanes, you are getting rid of parking. And so it's like you have a lot of businesses who are like, well, if people can't park, they're not going to come to my business because they can't park in front of my business to come patronize it. And it becomes a real sticking point in a lot of neighborhoods. So actually, like, that's often why these projects take so long to complete is because there is so much tension within the neighborhood. And then, of course, you have drivers who, don't like their road being encroached into, right?
They don't want 2 lanes reduced to 1, the additional stop signs,
and traffic, right?
Cameras.
You are making it slower. You are making it slower to get to drive through this road, and no one wants their commute impacted.
When we have these conversations, I feel like I'm always the one who's like, oh, don't add a speed camera over there. I'm going to be caught speeding too much. Or, I don't necessarily want to slow down with all the speed bumps that are throughout my mom's neighborhood, for example. But when you read that Brighton Park experiences 43% more traffic fatalities than other neighborhoods in the city, it's hard to argue against these larger infrastructure projects that, like, to your point, Simone, is supposed to make it easier for everybody in the neighborhood, the bus riders, the walkers, the cyclists, and the drivers. But because our city, like most cities, were designed with the driver in mind, that's sort of who comes out against this, the driver and the small businesses, like you point out.
Well, Michelle, I'm curious to hear from you. You live in the neighborhood. Obviously, you traverse Archer
a lot.
You ain't got no car.
Yeah.
I have no car. Nope.
How is this playing out in the neighborhood? Like, how are we seeing this tension?
Yeah, I mean, like you both mentioned, there is lots of talk about people who support the project in terms of safety. I mean, Southside Weekly, Alma Campos talked to people who are cyclists in the neighborhood, lifelong residents of these areas that have been wanting this, have been wanting protected bike lanes, have been wanting pedestrian islands, right? So like when you're trying to cross a big street, sometimes you have to wait in the middle because a car doesn't see you. And so people have been, wanting safer solutions for our streets, for Archer, because Archer does feel kind of like a highway at times. It's very fast. It's including parking, it's 6 lanes. And so it is a very big street. But like you mentioned, there's always going to be people who are opposing. And so there's a lot of concerns around parking loss, around traffic, around emergency vehicle access is something that I've also heard people talk about in the community. And so despite, this has been a 2-year long community review process of over 20 meetings and events of the Chicago Department of Transportation trying to get community members involved in this. And of course, not everyone can go to community meetings. People have lives, people have jobs. But it seems like, according to Alder Julia Ramirez of the 12th Ward, that, she's tried to involve the concerns, tried to let, the Chicago Department of Transportation of these concerns. However, she says, this is something that predates her. And of course, there is so many people who, like I mentioned, really do want these initiatives to create a safer community. There isn't a lot of foot traffic on Archer. Even though we have 35th and Archer, the orange line right here, we have the 62 bus, which is very popular, that stretches, all the way from Harlem, that goes through Brighton Park, through McKinley, through Chinatown into downtown. And so with a street that has a lot of public transportation, has so much potential for bike lanes, not only is this discussion kind of surfacing through, people just being against bike lanes, but it seems like this is also becoming an opportunity for some political debate.
Well, it's literally launching the start of the 2027 municipal campaign season in the 12th Ward, right? We have municipal elections, February 2027, and sort of out of this debate has emerged someone trying to challenge Alderwoman Ramirez.
Yeah, so Claudia Zuno, who is a local business owner and a resident, has announced that she will be running against Alder Ramirez. At this campaign launch this past Monday, Francia at Block Hub reported that, Zuno said that Ramirez is a vote for Mayor Brandon Johnson's agenda, that because of this example of this initiative for adding these bike lanes and the changes on Archer Avenue is an example of how she isn't taking the concerns of community members and like their needs in the community. And so Zuno said that the first thing she would do if to be elected as the alderperson of the 12th ward is to remove these concrete barriers and to find other alternative ways to make the neighborhood safer in terms of the streets. Southside Weekly obtained 2 mass messages and press releases sent by Urban Center, which is a pro-charter school advocacy organization who is kind of known to go against like progressive elected officials.
I think they funded candidates in the school board race, right? They played a big role in that.
So put a pin on that, right?
Okay.
So because we will circle back to that. And so, they've been saying that Ramirez forced bike lanes on the community. And something that really stood out to me was that they said that working class people don't want bike lanes. So I was looking into, what people were saying. And, some people were saying that it's true. They agree that, people are worried about their commute times. There's a lot of truck routes that run through Archer.
I was like, the south of this development sits right off of the rail yard.
Exactly. And so people were really upset about that. But some people were like, hey, how about we imagine outside of driving everywhere? People were saying I have to take my kids to school and then I have to go to work. People are like, well, maybe at some point you would feel safe enough to park your car somewhere or leave your car at home and walk your child to school. If maybe with improved bus stops, you would be okay with your children going to school on their own or walking to school on their own or, getting to the businesses on their own. There was once a time where Archer had so many businesses that it was mostly pedestrians, walking up and down the street to hit multiple businesses, not driving, parking, going into one and going back into their car and going home. Urban Center, like I mentioned, is a pro-charter school advocacy group, is run by former UNO Charter School CEO Juan Rangel, and is affiliated with Paul Vallis, the former Chicago Public Schools CEO, who, as you remember, lost to Johnson in the 2023 mayoral runoff. And, we mentioned that Urban Center has been known to support past former school board candidates. And one of the school board candidates was Eva Villalobos, has emerged also as a person who's kind of opposing these bike lanes on Archer.
It's interesting. Yeah, that PAC is kind of becoming much more of a financial player in local elections between the school board. I have a feeling we're going to see their name again come 2027.
Urban Center Action, which is the organization's super PAC, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars during the Chicago school board cycle and election. And so it does feel like such a moment. It just feels like this conversation started with
a couple bike lanes.
Concern about bike lanes, concern about construction that's, has been happening since late 2025 and is going to be, it's projected to kind of end sometime in 2026. As someone who, lives in this area, this is my ward, I live off Archer. There's many times that since I've lived here that I wake up to chunks of car pieces all over the street. There's been times where I've woken up because of a car crash. I hear it out my window, I'm someone like you mentioned, I don't drive. I'm always on the buses around here. I'm always walking to the train station. And I do wish that there was more pedestrians outside. Because it makes me feel safer as someone who is a pedestrian.
And again, I tend to think like, the more walkable you make an area, the more vibrant that area is. Like I think about some of the most like vibrant commercial corridors here on the north side, right? And I'm not saying that, Archer has to look like, Milwaukee, but, these are corridors that have been experimenting with even more pedestrianization than already exists. Lincoln Avenue and Lincoln Square, they were doing construction on those roads and experimented with pedestrians only. Milwaukee Avenue in Logan and Wicker, right? Like have been experimenting.
Notoriously a tough drive.
A very tough drive. But one of the reasons it's tough is because there are so many pedestrians and there are bike lanes on Milwaukee and there have been lots of improvements. And yes, it does make those areas, if you're driving in that area, it absolutely feels more congested. But also, again, these are some of the most vibrant commercial corridors in the entire city of Chicago outside of downtown, right? And so it is always interesting to me when I see business opposition to street improvements like this, because it just seems to stand in contradiction to evidence of the other really busy commercial corridors that we kind of look to and point to and are like, this is sort of almost a civic ideal of what kind of an urban corridor should look like.
Also, what does it mean to say working class people don't want bike lanes? Like,
there's a real stereotype around that, though, Jacoby.
Yeah.
I think that
I
is like,
understand, but it's just such a broad statement to say
working families don't want their concrete bike lanes.
Yeah.
That's what the message said. I was surprised, going into local businesses too. I went into Paco's Tacos not that long ago in Brighton Park on Archer. And, they had a lot of signs saying, sign this petition. We do not want concrete bike lanes. And so it does feel like a lot of these businesses have that. I have friends who drive and who are also concerned because they take Archer part of their routes. And I'm the one telling them, like, all right, we'll figure it out. Leave your house earlier. And at the end of the day, whether you're for the bike lanes or not, the fact that this feels like, a group of people are using this momentum to overthrow Julia Ramirez.
I don't know about it. I mean, it's people
that's a hell of a start to a camp, or
it feels icky, I
don't know. Icky. That's kind of municipal politics for you, though, right? Like that's exactly the kind of thing you want.
An issue.
That's exactly the kind of thing you want someone like an aldermanic candidate kind of. Like it's kind of a perfect breeding ground for a campaign like that. It's okay. You disagree with what the current elected official is doing on a specific issue. Well, hey, here's what I'm going to do differently. And like, it's
your first issue at a time in which like ICE was running through these communities. Like the first thing I'm going to do, I'm the concrete bike lane.
That is what the whole
bike lane vigilante.
That's ward politics, Jacoby. That is ward politics. This is ward politics at its finest. And stories like this, I'm always fascinated by, because I do think it is a very material sort of thing of how do you get around in the neighborhood that you live in, and is it safe / comfortable / convenient for me to get around, depending on.
Definitely not shocked by it, even the least. No. It's just, for the first time, I hear you as a political candidate to be like, hey.
But you're not in the ward.
We ripping these bike lanes out.
It's not your vote, man. It's not your bike lanes.
It's not
They're my bike lanes, Simone. They're my bike lanes.
Michelle, I have a feeling the same thing's going to happen in my ward, because we just had this Broadway rezoning up here. And there are a lot of people who are against it. There's been an upzone, and like I have a feeling some candidates are going to come out of the woodwork explicitly on this, almost along exactly the same line. So I'm expecting something very similar in my ward.
Mm-hmm. Why not keep the Valentine's Day vibes going for another week? I'm talking a romantic Sunday afternoon at one of Chicago's best piano concerts with a mimosa or a Manhattan slushie in your hand, and you getting all of that inside the former 7-Eleven off Clark and Belle Plaine. Yes, the one across from Graceland. The venue is now called The Checkout, and it's from Access Contemporary Music. The next concert is February 22nd, featuring rock star pianist Wen-Ting Shi, who is performing the ultimate masterpiece. Yes, B minor sonata from Franz Liszt. And if you ask a classical music nut like myself, for just $20, that's already worth the price of admission. But that's just the first part of the show. She is also jumping into their American and Russian composer bags as well. And on top of that, you can get 20% off when you use promo code PIANO. You're welcome. You could do it at thecheckout.org. Solo piano spotlight at the checkout. Beautiful music, unexpected vibes, and yes, adult slushies. That's code PIANO at thecheckout.org. It has been a historic week for holidays in Chicago. For the first time in 30 years, Ramadan and Fat Tuesday, aka the start of Lent, are falling within days of each other. Lunar New Year happened on Tuesday. Simone, there are Lunar New Year celebrations happening very close to where you live. Are you going to get outside and get involved?
I don't even have to get outside. Like I can
You can just look out the window?
I can just look out the window, yeah, because I think the parade comes along Sheridan here. The Lunar New Year parade in Uptown along Argyle. It's really funny because there are a lot of businesses, that participate locally, and actually like I will walk around and just see lion dancers like practicing like in full costume. Like you just walk around. and like the elementary schools in the area get in on the parade. It's always a good time. You also, it's a really excellent time. Even if you don't want to like stand outside, like I will often go eat brunch at Tweet, which again is along Sheridan, and like you can watch it go by from the window there.
I've read that nearly 2 billion people across the world observe and celebrate Chinese New Year, the most significant annual holiday in China and across East and Southeast Asian cultures. What are some traditions that people participate in during this 15 days of celebration?
I it's interesting because like the things I see around my neighborhood are obviously the color red is a huge deal, right? Red is and you just sort of see red in everything, and you see these lanterns that people grab and put up. And then there's a lot of food that like there's a lot of food involved.
Yeah.
Because every restaurant you walk up and down Argyle, and there's several Vietnamese, but also you have Thai restaurants and others as well. But all of these restaurants are just putting together these like I don't quite know what they are, but you will see them putting together these sort of packages of food, just like piles and piles and piles. You have Chu Quan Bakery here that is preparing baked goods ahead of time. And so those are some of the things I can observe from having lived in the neighborhood.
I remember Kevin, when we had him on a couple of years ago, talked about one of the big traditions is people bring their family together. A lot of family reunions take place, and people will sit down across the generations and make dumplings together. And so if you're seeing a bunch of dumpling specials or a bunch of restaurants encouraging you to come in and try their dumplings this time of year, that is the reason
and go do it,
behind
because dumplings are delicious any time of year. So yeah, we've got the parade up here in Uptown on Saturday. I believe Chinatown's parade isn't until March 1. So because like the Lunar New Year, it's kind of a long, it's not just one day, right?
No.
I think the official...
And the Lantern Festival or the parade happens 15 days after the day of Lunar New Year.
Yeah, and so between now and then is just going to be a whole range of celebrations. You can also check our events page, chicago.citycast.fm, and we've got some other events coming up this weekend around the city as well.
The next holiday that people are recognizing is the start of Ramadan. I think that actually technically started on Wednesday. People start observing Ramadan, which reminds me of a couple of years ago when me and Michelle attended a community iftar. For people who don't remember, Ramadan is the 9th and holiest month of the Islamic calendar, observed by Muslims worldwide. They spend about 30 days fasting from dawn till dusk, but it's also prioritizes prayer, community service, volunteering, as well as bringing the community together and celebrating empathy, really like thinking about others during this time as much as is about self-reflection. Michelle, what do you remember most from our community iftar?
Yeah, so we went to the Muslim community center up in Old Irving Park. And what I remember most is just how inviting everyone was. You felt so much joy being in there. Like there was kids running around. You could tell people were really excited about this time of year for reflection and for being community, for prayer. And, I remember we even got to go to the back of the kitchen and see all the food that they were making and how they take turns making this much amount of food. And the idea of like, we won't turn anyone away. This is a time for people to come together and for prayer and for togetherness and for self-reflection. And so that always kind of stood to me as something that's, just really, really beautiful. And similar, as someone that grew up Catholic, that was also how Lent was kind of taught to us about that. That's what it was about. It was about discipline. It was about devotion. It was about reflecting and being community together. And so I think any celebration that puts that at the forefront is beautiful. And it was really cool to be there and to talk to people about it, because it's something that I didn't really grow up with.
I grew up, celebrating Fat Tuesday, which at my school was like this big day where they bring in a lot of like candy, a lot of donuts, punchki. There was just this big celebration, but that was it. That was the only sort of community eating, and then everyone went home to do their Lent sacrifice sort of in their own family. So the idea that there is just this community dinner happening every single day for a month, and just how much goes into that day after day was really beautiful to see.
I do think in Chicago, there are some food traditions around the actual Lenten season that I didn't grow up with. They're a bit more sort of Midwestern, kind of more European. But the one thing that I thought was interesting, our newsletter editor, Emmy Mack, is going to be doing a segment this week about pepper and egg sandwiches, which are popular during Lent because, particularly on Fridays, you're not really supposed to eat meat, or people give up meat altogether during Lent, particularly red meat and chicken. And so pepper and egg sandwiches are sort of a traditional kind of Lenten meal. And Emmy went to Little Italy over the weekend to like try a bunch, and they literally wouldn't serve them to her until Ash Wednesday, until the official start of Lent. And so, we take it very seriously here in Chicago. So be on the lookout for a guide to those. And then I think the other thing that was new to me was fish fries. Is not a thing I really grew up with. But is a lot more popular in the Midwest.
Growing up in Chicago in particular, I appreciated the very traditions of how people recognize it. Like I went to a school that, called it Fat Tuesday, and there was this hybrid between like you say, these sort of European traditions, because it was a Black Catholic school, but also these very sort of Southern, very Caribbean-based traditions as well. Carnival season leads right into Fat Tuesday and right into Lent. And so you'd get this mix of what felt like, a little bit of Polish and Irish and Italian tradition on one hand. And then on the other hand, a little Trinidad and Tobago, right? A little Dominican Republic, a little New Orleans, sort of all like thrown in together. And so the parades felt like a mix of traditions. And I never really took the time to parse them out. They just all were one and the same.
That's the thing about living in Chicago and experiencing kind of all three of these holidays at the same time in a city like Chicago is like all of these traditions, you're able to kind of see a little bit of everything, right? And I don't know, I think more reasons to celebrate in the middle of February, especially when we've got beautiful weather like we've got right now. I know it's going away soon. I know it's going to go back down, but it just seems like, I don't know, it's what a wonderful time to be alive, isn't it?
Yeah. And not to be hokey, but to see them all happening on the same week kind of reminds us we got way more in common than different, right? These are very different traditions performed differently. But at the end of it, it's a lot about self-reflection and celebrating joy and community service and bringing family together and, thinking about our ancestors and, how we can make ourselves and our community better. And it's a reminder for all of the different things that create barriers and borders between us. At the end of the day, so much of our traditions and our faiths, they look a lot more similar than different, a lot more to compare than contrast. If you listened to Tuesday's episode, you probably got the sense that we are tired of talking about the Bears. Unless it's Hail Mary finishes and playoff runs, we got a lot of smoke for the stadium saga that is ongoing between the Bears, Chicago, Arlington Heights, Indiana, maybe Iowa. I don't know. But, we checked our DMs, we checked our inbox, our messages this weekend. Y'all still had thoughts. Y'all didn't want us to drop this conversation completely. Simone, what did listeners and readers have to say?
Yeah, the consensus is, even though I was like, so I literally asked the people, I was like, please let me know if you're tired of listening to this, because I'm kind of tired of talking about it. And the consensus is people are not tired of it. I guess, stadiums, stadiums are that way. One person wrote in who was giggling so hard at me, losing my mind over the ongoing, unending Bears location shit. They say, water's still wet. this story ain't never gonna die, and I'm afraid that this person is right. Jessica in Logan Square. I'd like to do a dramatic reading of this because I think it's pretty funny.
It's worth it.
Texted us and said, "I'm absolutely living for the way the Battle of the Bears." Trademark, is playing out right now. It's like a Midwestern Game of Thrones. The intensity, the politics, the maps. And then sort of sets a scene here. Indiana athletic director staring directly into camera. "We'll give you the hand of our most beautiful daughter, all the gold in the kingdom, and 1,000 cows to get the Bears here." Arlington Heights says, "Would you betray your word? Prepare for lawsuits." And then Jessica says, "Give me more." So,
where is your honor, Kevin Warren, to announce on the morning of the Bears playoff?
On this day?
The treachery.
And so I guess we'll still keep giving to you. Sam from Glenview had a critique. Sam from Glenview said, "Don't know if you were very clear about the property tax relief. You made it sound like all these municipalities would have to take a huge haircut to get the stadium. I don't know if that's the issue. What I understand of the issue is they want a clarity on future property tax increases." It goes on to say, "You didn't cover the tremendous amount of income that will be raised by a hotel, restaurants, bars, and other venues," and says, "Not tired of hearing about this. It's an important issue for our area." So it's actually funny because there's going to be a hearing on this bill in Springfield this week, happening today, Thursday.
I think everybody wants property tax clarity. Like, everybody wants
so
that.
What's happening, I think it is worth getting into the details of what's in this bill because and of course, like, the interesting thing is, like, lawmakers are literally saying outright, like, if Indiana weren't making this play for the Bears, we probably would still be dragging our feet on this. Like, there is impetus because of what's going on in Indiana. And so this bill that's being debated right now in Springfield, it's called referred to as the Mega Development Bill. And basically it would allow this new development in Arlington Heights, the Bears, it would freeze property tax assessments, which again is when they decide how valuable a property is. And then that is a figure that is used to calculate how much you end up paying. More valuable property, you tend to pay more in property taxes, right?
So do they want the property tax freeze at the assessment pre-construction or first phase of construction? Or do they want the assessment based on what the expected final project, even if that's a decade down the road, what those assessments would be?
It would freeze it for a specific period, certainly during construction, but I think even for a period after construction as well.
Got it.
So it would freeze that. And it would also allow for the Bears to negotiate what's called payment in lieu of taxes. Basically, in addition to paying, I believe it's in addition to paying whatever, obviously they would be paying a lower property tax if they got that freeze, right? But in addition to paying that lower tax rate, they could negotiate with the municipality of Arlington Heights to pay some kind of regular fee every year to help kind of offset what the city would be making if they were raising the taxes in accordance with the assessments. And one of the lawmakers who's helping to negotiate it has said that, like, it would be pretty narrow to the stadium itself. So, like, that property tax freeze wouldn't necessarily apply to businesses that are part of that entertainment district that the Bears are looking to build there. Like, that those would still, it seems like, be assessed and would be paying taxes as regularly, as sort of regularly scheduled. The reason the Bears want something like this is, like, their argument is like, oh, well, it helps us kind of get the financing in order. If we know how much we're going to be paying every year, we know we don't have to plan for it going up, and we don't know how much it's going to go up by, then, like, we can get the financing in order and we can pay the bills, right? I think from where I sit, you're an organization with a bunch of money who's raising season ticket prices by 13%, and we're still paying off your last renovation that you don't have any financial obligation to. And, like, I kind of am not that sympathetic to your property tax woes, especially when residential property taxes in Cook County have hit people pretty significantly over the past few cycles.
And the value on the Bears is actually $8.9 billion, so nearly $9 billion on $630 million in annual revenue. Oh my God, the amount of people who will jump into the comments to say, oh, but they don't have all of that money, or that's the value of the team, but like the McCaskies aren't billionaires. I don't give a damn about none of that. The idea that we need to be empathetic to their financial situation, that they can't pay for this all on their own. Stop talking about them as if they are just like sitting on billions and billions. I don't care about none of that particular nuance. Like, you say you got the money for the stadium. The idea that we need sort of long-term help to pay the bills.
I could see, it's interesting because like, I do think in a way that maybe this calculus does make sense for a place like Arlington Heights, right? Like, this would be a massive development for them, and like obviously would bring a bunch of people into that suburb, right? That otherwise probably wouldn't be visiting Arlington Heights. And like, I think for them, like this kind of deal could absolutely make sense. And there's maybe a little more, the value at the end of the day is maybe a little bit higher. I think for us sitting here in Chicago, we are just so salty about, again, still paying the bills for Soldier Field. And like, maybe it doesn't matter since like, we're not talking about Soldier Field. I don't think that value calculus would be the same. And in terms of like freezing property tax assessments, again, the whole point of property taxes is it's supposed to be a progressive tax in the sense of the people who have more money, i.e., more valuable property, pay more. And so, this is a thing that is absolutely going to be really, really valuable. And would be going to pay for schools and roads and things like that in Arlington Heights and probably into state and county coffers as well. At the end of the day, it's still a subsidy, even if it's not quite as I guess debt ripping as the Soldier Field subsidy was.
Yeah, I do understand the idea that the Bears Stadium being in Arlington Heights will for sure bring more money to that part of the state. But again, as all studies have shown, most of the profit that is going to be taken in from this development is going back to the Bears. And so
that's why they're doing it, right?
Yeah, we can hype up the idea that like Arlington Heights, the northwest suburbs, is likely to see an infusion of money in perpetuity, but it isn't the type of share that the Bears front office want lawmakers to think. And I do think that's the reason lawmakers move their feet so slow. And now the pressure is, well, we need something versus nothing, and are negotiating against Indiana, in which they're simply asking the Bears to do the same thing Soldier Field is, which is we will own it, you will rent it. And yeah, we may give you some more of the profit, but like, I don't think anybody is going to argue that deal is somehow most advantageous for the Bears, who've made it clear they want to own the property. And so, yeah, it seems that what's motivating this part of the conversation is a little nefarious. Is not the right word, but I feel like I'm being played, and I always knew I was being played. But I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today, executive producer Simone Alicea.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
And producer Michelle Navarro.
Thanks, Jacoby.
And as always, if you got things you want to add to the conversation, don't hesitate. Reach out to us at 773-780-0246. How are you observing holidays this week or over the next month? What do you think about the Battle of the Bears or the Battle of the Bike Lanes? Please let us know. Before we get out of here, some good news. We got great events going down with the Chicago Park District all weekend long, including on Saturday, you've got the Black History Month celebration at LeClaire Hurst Park in Garfield Ridge. You've also got the Polar Adventure Day at Big Marsh Park in South Deering. And then on Sunday, there is a guided winter hike at the North Park Nature Center. I'll drop links for each of these in our show notes, or you can just head over to chicagoparkdistrict.com. As always, I appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.